permanent observer mission of the African Union to the United Nations.
So it was done especially to have this gathering taking place in May.
May his soul rest in peace.
And convey to African Union that we mean business, that we're serious about what we're doing, and that we'll be working very hard to make a reality the eventual goals of sustainable economic development.
In 1915, the European world was at war, not for liberation, but for conquest of the most important turf in the world, which was Africa.
A man of extraordinary accomplishments. However, this tribute is not simply a matter of listing titles and honors.
Theoreticians of Pan-Africanism that we have seen thus far. And this achievement rested precisely on his deep political practice. That is, his political theory was rooted in political praxis. As a Jamaican nationalist, he framed Jamaican freedom in the context of African freedom. He believed that the independence of each African country was tied to the liberation of all African countries, and that Africa's security is related directly to the security of black people in the diaspora. Self-determination for African people is the most important Pan-African project of our time and moving forward. Ambassador Thompson was, as has been mentioned by my brother Len Jeffries, a firm advocate and believer in reparations. He considered that to be the remaining moral and political issue of the world today. That there cannot be any adjustment between Africans and Europeans until this issue of reparations is dealt with. He had a life, as has been said, as a distinguished politician, diplomat, and brilliant lawyer. However, he was the son of Jamaican migrant workers. He was born in Panama, where his father worked on the Panama Canal. That's another area of history in our hemisphere that needs to be studied and learned by our future generations. Yes. When he was a young boy, his family returned to Jamaica. This was the beginning of his Pan-African experience in the Panamanian context and returning to the Jamaican context and seeing these links in his own family. It is important to point out, as has been mentioned, that he grew up in the era of the Garvey movement. It wasn't just simply once he got back to Jamaica and when he met in Nkrumah these people that he became Pan-Africanist. He was before then. He was when he was growing up in Jamaica, and we don't have enough evidence of what was the influences on him at that period. I think it's reasonable to suggest that at least one was the presence of the UNIA. Marcus Garvey, the great Jamaican Pan-Africanist, had also traveled to, as many of us know, to Panama, to Costa Rica, to Nicaragua, to Cuba, to inspect the living conditions of black workers. After graduating from Mico College, young Dudley was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. Now, he could have taken this in any direction, as Brother Len has mentioned. But he went to Oxford University and studied jurisprudence and obtained his master's degree in jurisprudence. He was admitted to the Jamaican Bar Association, which he was elected to serve as president, and was appointed to the Queen's Council. Now this is important in the colonial context because this allowed him to practice law in Africa and in the Caribbean under the so-called aegis of British colonialism. During World War II, he enlisted in the British Royal Air Force. He was decorated as one of the best fighter pilots in the British Air Force, and certainly the best to come from the colonies. This was an interesting contradiction he posed to the British. But it allowed him to express what side he was on. When he came back from the Second World War, he took up the case of the black servicemen, the Jamaicans, the Africans, and others who were being mistreated by the Brits in terms of not being given their full benefits. He was their lawyer, and he led their fight. This was quite unusual. Not only to go through Oxford, but to go through Sandhurst, to go through the military academy, and still hold on very firmly as to who he was as an African. Going to Harvard and to Yale and Cornell and to Bryn Mawr and to Columbia, not necessarily a death knell. His life was a good indication of how it could be conquered and used for the benefit of our people. He returned to, after his law degree, he returned to Jamaica and joined the People's National Party, the PNP, and the struggle for independence in Jamaica. However, during his time in London, he met and worked with, as colleagues, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, Kwame Nkrumah, Ross McConnell, and others. And it was this Pan-African link that influenced his decision to move with his family to Tanzania to open up his young law practice. Why did he go to Tanzania? Why did he determine he wanted to practice in East Africa? Because he always located him at the point of where Africans were struggling against colonialism and imperialism. So he had office in both Dar es Salaam and Nairobi. And it was in this context that he was able to mobilize as an officer of the Queen's Council. He organized and mobilized support, the defense support for Jomo Kenyatta, who was accused by the Brits as being the instigator and leader of the Mau Mau. Dudley Thompson, of course, was credited by Jomo Kenyatta once Jomo Kenyatta became the first president of independent Kenya as the man who had saved his life, and probably the man who helped save the direction of the anti-colonial struggle in Africa as well. Dudley Thompson also advised and legally represented Julius Nyerere as the young anti-colonial fighter who was organizing his own organization. This, of course, brought Dudley Thompson into the attention of the British Colonial Office. Dudley Thompson moved his law office to Jamaica in the 1960s, and true to his Pan-Africanist convictions, he practiced throughout the Caribbean region. For instance, in Antigua, in Barbados, in Dominica, in Grenada, Belize, Nassau, St. Kitts, and Trinidad. He became directly involved in the anti-colonial movement in Barbados and Belize. Dudley Thompson was a model of progressive black internationalism. He was a radical black internationalist. He also was a fierce and unrelenting supporter and advocate for the less fortunate African laboring masses in Jamaican society. He served as Minister of Security and Foreign Affairs in the governments of Michael Manley in 1970s. In the Foreign Ministry, he advocated for the right of Cuba's self-determination, for the self-determination of the non-aligned nations. And he was appointed ambassador to Ghana, Namibia, and Nigeria. He also represented Jamaica at the United Nations and the Organization of African Unity. Due to his reputation and commitment to Africa, he was elevated to an appointment as Ambassador at Large in Africa, based in Nigeria. This past October, it is my understanding the African Union bestowed the unique status of Citizen of Africa to the Honorable Dudley Thompson. The African Union designated Dudley Thompson as he has been widely recognized as an African legend. It is our duty, which we only begin here today, to take it upon ourselves, our responsibility, to ensure that His Excellency Dudley Thompson becomes and remains a living legend. Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to bring up our brother, Professor Ron Daniels, a professor at York College, and also president of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, and a 34-year-old friend.
Thank you very much, Omawale, and to Ambassador Teddy Antonio, to the other members of the Diplomatic Corps, Dr. Falou, the African Diaspora Task Team, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, the president of WADU, and of course the sister Cecile, the partner of Dudley Thompson. Let me say that it's a real honor to have been asked to share a few thoughts on the life and legacy of Dudley Thompson. And I don't bring any claims of having the kind of rich relationship that I've heard from so many, and in fact I've considered this a great learning experience. Let me apologize in advance because I do teach at York College. I do have to leave for a class. This is finals time, and I need to make sure that my students are properly prepared to take on their revolutionary duty. So let me just have three reflections that I think are illustrative of the life and legacy of Dudley Thompson. These are reflections that I have of Dudley Thompson. And I tell the story of not really being too moved very often about the experiences I've had in life. But I remember the first anniversary of the People's Revolutionary Government in Grenada, and having had the privilege of being a part of the U.S. Grenada Friendship Society delegation, and having had an opportunity to actually sit on the podium. And it was interesting because not only was Maurice Bishop there, obviously, but there was also the Honorable Michael Manley, President of Jamaica, and of course a global statesman. And next to him was Comandante Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua. And sitting right next to him and in front of me was the Honorable Dudley Thompson. And that gave me goosebumps, because to be able to sit with these legendary figures was obviously very, very powerful. But what was also powerful was what was said that day, and the fact that these leaders were there at the very forefront of what at that time was the leading force in the Caribbean in terms of projecting Pan-Africanism and revolutionary struggle. And some of you may recall that we would go to Grenada, and after the official stuff was over, we also gathered, as Pan-Africanists, and we'd have a couple of days of plotting and planning and talking about what we were going to do. And I suspect that's one of the reasons why Grenada was eventually attacked and the regime of Maurice Bishop destroyed. The second reflection, Sister Cecile, you may recall this as well, is that we in the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, which is really about the proposition of saying if we can do Pan-Africanism elsewhere, if we have a growing continental African population, Jamaican population, Caribbean population, whatever the populations are in this country, then we really need to talk about how can we practice Pan-Africanism right here in these United States of America. There are now 50,000 Nigerians in Houston, Texas. The fact that we are the same color and occupy the same space does not necessarily mean that we are building the kinds of relationships that we need if we're going to exercise black power here and abroad. And so Dr. Shelby Lewis, who some of you know, was on this issue, Dr. Falou, that you talked about, and others have mentioned. The whole notion of the new scramble for Africa. Du Bois said that Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth.
Yes.
And so now we see this new scramble. It's almost like 1884 all over again.
Yes.
Not only the Chinese, the Indians, the Saudis, there are whole bunches of people, the Koreans, everybody is in on this new scramble. And so we convened at York College a session of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, and we asked the Honorable Dudley Thompson would he come. And both Shelby Lewis on that day and Dudley Thompson both spoke. And he charged us on that day to say that we were on the right track in terms of saying to the leaders of Africa, actually, that this scramble for Africa must be met, it must be checked, and it must be reversed, so that indeed Africa can be for Africans at home and abroad. And so we have been working on a declaration of principles for foreign investment in Africa, just as lay folk, that might be considered at some point as a kind of basis for how governments and the private sector interface and interact with foreign interests, so that Africa will not be squandered and not be able to be the resource for black people the world over. The final reflection is just almost 4 years ago, as we prepare now for the next State of the Black World Conference in Washington, D.C. We invited the Honorable Dudley Thompson to come to New Orleans for the second State of the Black World Conference. And of course, this indomitable spirit, in his 90s, it was unbelievable. And he was there with Danny Glover and a number of other notable diplomats and so forth. But it was Dudley Thompson who held the day. He walked to the podium and with great strength and with great power, and he lectured in a positive sense, challenged, exhorted us on that occasion that Africa must continue to discuss the whole issue of the United States of Africa, that we must be opposed to the whole question of neo-colonialism and imperialism, and really exhorted us in the most passionate way to stay true to the principles of progressive Pan-Africanism. And I'm delighted to say that on that occasion, among others, we honored the Honorable Dudley Thompson at that occasion with the Institute of the Black World 21st Century Legacy Award at the State of the Black World Conference in New Orleans. And so I think that a lot has been said, and it's been encapsulated by so many in terms of saying that really, the real issue is carrying on the spirit of Dudley Thompson. Because I think he would be saying to us, and looking down on this occasion, really smiling, to say, yes, Africans and African people and the African continent must unite. Africa must unite. And in that regard, we must say that what he would say, and that is, Aluta continua, Aluta continua, Aluta continua, the struggle continues.
Very, very good friend, Ambassador Gaspar Martin from Angola, to my beloved brother, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, my sister, Dr. Falou, and to all of you who have made this day happen. It is my honor. I am humbled. I am so energized too by the fact that this is happening. I took my instructions from my brother, Dr. Ambassador Kumanyamwiri. in fact, engaged in so many of the discussions around Pan-Africanism. When Dr. Jeffries was talking about Ambassador Dudley Thompson, I recalled every session. I recalled every book. I recall the meeting that we had when Abiola was president. I recall Ambassador Dudley Thompson preparing the agenda for how we would approach Abiola to pay for, because one of the things that I remember Ambassador Dudley Thompson saying is that if we are to make Pan-Africanism in fact real, that we are going to have to pay for it. And so Abiola was setting up this eminent persons commission, and Dr. Thompson laid out how it would be done. There's just so many memories and instructions from how it is that we make the transatlantic slave trade the very essence of why it was that we had to fight for reparations. It was the instructions by Dr. Thompson on the issue of Pan-Africanism as a world phenomenon. I can't go over all of the incidents in the New Line movement when we were in Cuba. I mean, it goes on. And I don't want to reiterate all of the things that has been said. But one of the things that stuck out and sticks out for me, and I think the ambassador from Jamaica said it, Dr. Thompson was an artist. And I have some of them. I have 4 beautiful cards that he did, and his own beautiful cards, and being old and rushed and not able to put my hands on them today, I will, and I will share them with Sister Cecile. But one of the things that was of the utmost importance was his artistry. Because, see, it is the creative expression of an artist that can impart what it is to learn and teach. And I think for me, that artistry, that determination, that I received from Dr. Thompson inspired us from 1993 or 94, I can't remember which year, to push on the question of reparations. Also, the idea that Africans in the diaspora had to continue within the confines of the United Nations and in the African Union, because indeed the recognition by the African Union that, as it has been said, that the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade has to be the engine for Pan-Africanism. And our stint in Uganda, Dr. Kamara, and in Tanzania and in City College were made possible because of Dr. Thompson. So I am honored, and I don't want to reiterate what everybody has said, and I too have to run out and get back to work. But I take with me that the legacy of Dr. Dudley Thompson cannot be rhetorical, that in fact it must be made to be a reality. And Africa will unite, and Pan-Africanism will survive. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Come to the podium. And two members of the high-level council, Mr. Lawrence Smith from Lawyer from Washington, D.C. and Economic Development, please stand up. And Dr. Sheila Walker, also member of the high-level council.
I'd like to say a few very few words because I'm really not prepared, but I didn't think I'd be asked to speak. However, I want to thank you all for taking this time to recognize my husband. He was, as all of you have said in one form or another, an extraordinary human being. He was. He was committed. He was dedicated. And whatever he put his mind to, it was like a laser. He just went straight there. I mentioned to somebody earlier, failure was not a part of his vocabulary. That didn't exist. You had to be positive and you had to focus on a goal. He was dedicated, as you know, to Pan-Africanism, and he was certainly committed to seeing a united, what you referred to as a United States of Africa, but which he decided should be a confederation of African states. He felt that we should separate ourselves from the United States of America or United States of whatever, and he saw the term confederation. That's Cecile, he said, is what I'm going to put forward, a confederation of African states. I really hope that we will see this as a reality in 2017. I hope that the various states of Africa will recognize the importance of unification, because clearly, individually, they cannot deal with the world powers of today. I want to say also that I was very pleased to hear about you discussing his commitment to reparations. I think that the problem that we've had, and we discuss this often, is that most people think of reparations, or many, let's put it this way, I think actually most, in terms of what am I going to get, instead of what Dudley felt was reparations should be thought of in global terms, like, we built your universities, therefore give us our scholarships. You took, as he often said, when we got independence, you gave us the crown, but you kept the jewels. So that was something he said over and over again. And therefore, reparations should be taking care, allowing our students, helping us to release us from the debt that you have, burdened us with, so that we can put money back into our individual countries to help develop our countries, develop our young people. Dudley believed in the youth. He had time for, we went, I think it was to Morehouse, and a group of young students came there, and he made time to talk to each and every one, not only as a group, of course, and individually, trying to stress the importance of their connection to Africa so that they would feel a part. But he also felt that because they didn't know enough about their history, as he said, a tree without roots, you can't survive, because it's simply, you don't know. Therefore, you have no interest in connecting with your Africanness. And he was very proud of that. So, I would just like to add one little thing. I don't know how many of you were aware of Dudley's sense of humor. He had a tremendous sense of humor. And I would just point this one little incident. I'm sure the British didn't find it humorous, but he certainly did. When he applied to become a member of the RAF, I gather that part of the form says, "Are you white?" He answered, "Yes."
he was admitted. They saw him, but they didn't, in other words, test me. So, I mean, this is just one small little indication because there are numerous ones. But I will confirm that he was an extraordinary human being, and I was privileged. So I thank you for all the tributes that you have given.
Thank you, Sophie Thompson, and the African women of Panama will make a presentation to Mr. C. Thompson.
Of this intellectual lion, we call him Baba Dudley Thompson, and it goes like this: whereas Africa and African people have originated civilizations and have greatly contributed to the very foundation of modern sciences, philosophies, and spiritual systems across the world, and whereas for centuries Africans everywhere have been severely oppressed and underdeveloped due to the horrifying experiences of slavery, imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. And whereas great African and African diaspora leaders have sacrificed through hard work and struggles to liberate and unify Africa and African people worldwide, leading to the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, in May 1963, and now the African Union. And whereas African Union leaders have recently taken the initiative to invite and encourage the full participation of the African diaspora as an important part of our continent in the building of the African Union, and have taken concrete steps to support this initiative. And whereas the World African Diaspora Union, WACPtv, has responded under the leadership of His Excellency Dudley Thompson, other esteemed leaders and diverse representatives of organizations of the African diaspora to establish the 6th diaspora region for the union and development of Africans. And whereas WACPtv and other diaspora organizations support the Century Economic Initiative by the African Union Diaspora Task Team to establish a database bank of 10,000 African diaspora organizations and individuals, starting with the greater New York area, for the sustainable development of Africa. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that this month of May be established as Africa Month by the AU and all organizations of African people in Africa and the African diaspora, except the full month of May, to honor our great African legacy, to celebrate the struggles for freedom and independence, to further the union of African people globally. And be it resolved that the AU and the African diaspora work as partners for the economic empowerment of our people by promoting sustainable development of our human capital and to maximize our capacity for business, trade, investments, and commerce between Africa and the African diaspora. And be it resolved that the African diaspora and the African Union work together for the propagation of the teachings of our Pan-African history, heritage, culture, and sciences to our children by celebrating Pan-African university programs and projects across the world. And be it resolved that the African Union take decisive actions to promote African diaspora dual citizenship, political and social representation in the African Union, reparations, and the immediate union of Africa by 2017 on the 100th birthday of His Excellency Dudley Thompson. And be it further resolved that the decisions by African Union and African Diaspora Summit leaders in South Africa, May 25th, 26th, 2012, be reflective of and dedicated to an honor of the work and vision of the legendary Ambassador Dudley Thompson and other great Pan-Africans. And finally, be it further resolved that the African Union and all African diaspora organizations organization accept this resolution on this day of May 14, 2012, during Africa Month at the AU headquarters in New York, be known as Ambassador Dudley Plan for Empowerment for Black people in the world, presented to the African Union on May 12, 2012.
And now the ambassadors and the speakers can come while we call the gentry.
Something's gotta change, my people, my people. All my people, thank you very much. Show me the answer, 'cause we don't say it, we don't say it. My people, say love is gonna change. My people, my people. My people, say love is gonna change. My people, my people. Love above them. My people, say love is gonna change. My people, my people. Like you wrote this song.
On the 29th of June, in Sheldon, South Carolina, in the Kingdom of Oyotunji Village, there will be a Pan-African Assembly where Pan-Africanists from all over the world are coming together to, at the same time that the meetings are going on in Durban, meetings are going on all over the world, to come together to forward the agenda. We're asking everyone who's present to come to the assembly in South Carolina. We must continue this work. It is very important. Very important.
Give them the website.
It is oyotunjivillage.org. in Sheldon, South Carolina. The only African village in North America.
Right.
And please go on that website, because WADU will be a very good part of that, and many, many organizations. It's a call of action. And from this meeting, we can call and make it happen. Organize. You know, one of Bobby Dudley's favorite phrases were, stop agonizing and let's organize. The 29th of June, Sheldon, South Carolina.
Thank you again, brothers and sisters, and the contribution we say from WACPtv. Many, many thanks. We're going to vacate this space, the sacred space, and we will have a reception outside, so we can communicate with each other outside. And I'm glad to see the WADU leadership here. I'm glad to see our brother Kofi come up from Atlanta. I'm glad to see those of you who are from the City College family here. The struggle definitely continues.